What's up, guys? Heatfire Ash here. If you see my channel for a while, you know that I have a lot of videos about Trick Room, and I've done several Trick Room teams. And right now, Trick Room is probably my favorite strategy to go for. I really like the idea of just setting up and then being able to go off on your opponent. Also, the Pokemon having more spread out EVs, you have more options you can do for. I really do enjoy it. But Trick Room is not impossible to beat, and this video I'm going to be going over some different ways that you can deal with Trick Room, because it is a strategy where if you don't have any idea, you have nothing dedicated on your team to deal with it, you're probably going to lose most of those games because you're dealing with hard-hitting, bulky Pokemon. So I'm going to go over some general use things that can deal with Trick Room, and then also go over a couple Trick Room sort of setup builds that people are using right now and how to deal with those. So starting off on just general use things, one way to deal with Trick Room is to have your own Trick Room user, something like Mimikyu, where your opponent will go set up Trick Room and then you Trick Room them either that same turn or the next turn, so that at the most they're only getting one turn of Trick Room in, and then you can use those turns just to overwhelm your opponent because you'll be faster than them. That is one method that works pretty well, although you do have to guess because sometimes your opponent might be expecting you to Trick Room to counter their Trick Room, so they might do something else. So you do have to be wary of that. Another option is a Pokemon with Fake Out. If you fake out the Pokemon that is using Trick Room, then you might just be able to, well, you can either stall for that one turn and get damage off of them, but basically gives you 2 turns to damage the Trick Room user, which is usually going to be enough to knock them out if you have something else with a lot of attack. So Fake Out can be good to stop Trick Room for 1 turn and then get 2 attacks on it to knock it out. And then lastly is Taunt. And this kind of used to be the go-to for me in past games. I used to always use Taunt just to deal with Trick Room. You could do something like faster Pokemon with Taunt. So Corviknight might not be the best because it's pretty slow. But you can use Taunt to basically stop your opponent from using Trick Room for 5 turns, I believe it is. What is it? No, 3 turns. 3 turns. But anyway, 3 turns is enough that you can knock out the Trick Room user. So basically, as I said, this is Taunt, Fake Out, and your own Trick Room are 3 general use options you have for getting rid of Trick Room or stopping it from your opponent. Although, if your opponent has a team really set up as a hard Trick Room team, these aren't necessarily going to work. They kind of have certain Pokemon in place to deal with these common counters. So let's go to the first team that is used commonly for Trick Room, and that is going to be a Hatterene and Indeedy lead. And this is kind of what I've been using on my channel a lot, and I really like it. It's very powerful. And this is kind of a normal set you could expect to see from a Hatterene. So most of them are going to be running Berry, which is going to have Steel-type attacks. And that's because of one of the counters I'm going to show you here, which is Duraludon. They kind of started using Berry to deal with Duraludons. Although there's something Duraludon can still do, which I'll go to in a minute. But the reason this is so powerful is, it should be Magic Bounce. Hatterene has Magic Bounce, which means it cannot be put to sleep, status, like a whole bunch of different things. But the important ones are it cannot be put to sleep, it cannot be taunted. Those are like the most important. So like I said before, Taunt, that is not going to work on Hatterene at all. Then Indeedy is going to be setting up Psychic Surge, which means you cannot use priority moves that are dealing damage, which means Fake Out now is no longer going to work. You cannot Fake Out Hatterene. So that's already 2 of the methods I suggested before that are not going to work with this team. And not to mention, we also have Follow Me here. So if you just have a strong Pokemon that you're going to be trying to deal damage, Follow Me is going to make everything hit the Indeedy and let the Hatterene just set up. So this is a very strong lead, but there is some things you can do to deal with it. So the first thing is going to be a Duraludon with the Stalwart ability, which lets it ignore Follow Me. So what you can do is you have Flash Cannon, you can Dynamax Duraludon and use a Pokemon with Helping Hand. There are tons of Pokemons with Helping Hand, Arcanine, Rotom, Hitmontop. There's a ton. You can look it up, but you can use Helping Hand with the Dynamax Steel Strike, and you want to have max special attack, and then also a boosting, so something like Expert Belt or Life Orb, or even Choice Specs if you really want. those can deal with the Hatterene, and that will one-shot a Hatterene through a Babiri Berry, as long as it's not special defensive at all. Most of them are not. Most Hatterenes are HP and special attack. And that will one-shot it, and you don't have to worry about Trick Room going up. Another thing you can do is you can run Choice Specs on Duraludon, and you can use Steel Beam undynamaxed, and that will knock out a Hatterene through Babiri Berry. Now, Steel Beam does make you lose 50% of your HP, so you got to be aware of that. And you also have to be, max attack and your choice specs, so you're locked in. So it's kind of like, it's like an all-in approach for sure, but it will get rid of it. No problem there. The only thing you have to be wary of is if Hatterenes start using something like Focus Sash, then this Helping Hand, this Duraludon will not work as a counter anymore. Right now, they're mostly running Babiri Berry, so you'll have to see how the meta changes. And another Pokemon you can use is Barracuda, and Barracuda can either be used with Poison Jab and then also Helping Hand. So Poison Jab, Helping Hand, and make sure you have a Life Orb with the Propeller Tail ability. And Propeller Tail is going to do the same thing as Stalwart did on Duraludon, let you ignore Follow Me. And then as long as you have a 252 attack and Adamant, you need to be Adamant as well, the Poison Jab will knock out the Hatterene in one hit. Or something a viewer suggested to me for my Rain team, actually. If you can set up Rain immediately and do a Max Geyser with having the Liquidation ability, Max Geyser in the Rain is enough to one-shot Hatterene as well. So that's another option that you can use specifically if you're on a Rain team. And something else that you can do is a double spread move. Something like Excadrill with like a Choice Band, Earthquake, and then plus another Pokemon with another spread move. Like if you have like say Excadrill and Charizard, you could go Earthquake and Heat Wave, something like that. You're gonna have to calc out exactly to make sure it will knock out, and obviously you kind of have to be set up for this. Like if you're using Earthquake, you want your own Pokemon to not get hit by it, but you can use 2 spread moves. You can also try for something like Rock Slide, but this is not very good in my opinion. Go for Rock Slide and try to get a flinch on Hatterene, but that's pretty risky. It's only a 30% chance, so I wouldn't really recommend that as much. And then my last option here is you can run something like Toxtricity, and you can run Sludge Wave. If you're Sludge Wave and you are Choice Specs, you will actually knock out Hatterene, and make sure, of course, that you do have max special attack, and that will knock out a Hatterene using the Sludge Wave, which does hit everyone. It does hit your own Pokemon as well, so be aware of that. All right, and then to the other kind of most common set that I see is something like Togekis or even Butterfree, but I think Togekis is a little more popular with Follow Me again, and then Dusclops. And Dusclops is extremely tanky with EV Light. It's doubling, or not doubling, but 1.5 times its special defense and defense, which are super high. And usually this is going to go through Trick Room and basically be able to tank up any hit. So, in my opinion, the number one way to deal with this, which also will deal with Hatterene too, is going with something like Chandelier with Imprison and Trick Room. And what Imprison does is it makes it, as long as this Pokemon stays on the field, no other Pokemon is going to be able to use moves that this one contains. So if it contains Trick Room, you use Imprison, no other Pokemon on the field is going to be able to use Imprison, or going to be able to use Trick Room. So it'll just straight up not allow them to use it. And that's going to be the most, I would say, it's going to be the best way to deal with Dusclops, because it is so tanky. And with a Follow Me, it's going to be near impossible to deal with it. Something else you can do is you can go for Fake Out. Now, you cannot Fake Out Dusclops because it's a Ghost type. That won't work. But you can Fake Out Togekis to ignore the Follow Me for a turn. And if you do that, you can then use something with Taunt and use that on the Dusclops. So I kind of said Taunt and Fake Out were both ways to deal with Trick Room. But in this case, with this certain setup of Togekis and Dusclops, you will need to use Fake Out on the Togekis and then Taunt on the dusclops, and that will give you 3 turns to deal with the dusclops before it can get Trick Room up. So that is a strategy, although you do have to have these 2 moves on the 2 Pokemon, which obviously you're sacrificing something. So it kind of depends on how scared you are of Trick Room, as well as the Chandelure. If you do run something with Imprisoned Trick Room, and by the way, there are tons of Pokemon that can run this setup. It's not just Chandelure. Like almost any ghost type, I think, can do this. But basically, this Pokemon is going to be just for Trick Room. You're probably never going to bring it against anything else. So it is kind of a waste of a slot. But if you're really weak to Trick Room, you might want to do that. Lastly, something you can do is Dragapult. So if you actually have a Dragapult, and by the way, you're going to need to use Fake Out on Togekis again with this setup. But Fake Out on Togekis and then a Dragapult with the Max Phantasm. So you need a Dynamax. You need to have a Life Orb or better. And then max attack, and you can actually beat Jolly. And that will be enough to knock out a Dusclops if it has under, I think, 16 or under H defense EVs. 16 or under defense EVs. So that method is kind of risky because, you know, if it goes with the set that I have here, 120 defense, 136 special defense, Dragapult is not going to be able to one-shot it. So it would have to be basically a specially defensive Dusclops, which it probably is not worth it. But it's just something to keep in mind if your team, if you are running a Dragapult and you have nothing else, or you just don't want to really sacrifice anything, you can go for that. And depending on how the Dusclops is built, you might be able to take it out in one hit. But right there, guys, that is kind of the 2 main setups for Trick Room that I've seen so far. And of course, the meta will change. People come up with new strategies and everything. And also, these are definitely not the only ways to deal with Trick Room. There's tons of other Pokemon. There's lots of other strategies out there that you can use. But these are just some methods I came up with that I think are pretty good at dealing with these 2 specific Trick Room setters. But I hope this helps you out. And I hope you're able to deal with Trick Room a little better by using some of these strategies. If you do have any more strategies that you think I missed, or ones that you just want to let other people know, definitely drop them down in the comments. I'm sure people would love to see even more options that they can use. But thanks so much for watching this video, guys. Please do like, comment, and subscribe if you did enjoy it and if it was helpful to you at all. And I'll catch you all in the next one.